If an ability triggers, if it isn't an ability of a permanent, counter it. But what triggers it isn't on a permanent?
Read again.
Whenever an ability triggers, if it isn't an ability of a permanent, counter it.
An ability. Well, surely an ability is anything like...
Oh, so it wouldn't trigger anything in your graveyard? Because those aren't permanents, because they're not in play, they're just cards.
Isn't a... So, like, say a spell, like...
Oh, no, because yes, it's a permanent card.
But, like, draw 2, discard 1. Is that not an ability on a spell?
Yeah, it's not triggered. That's just the spell effect.
Storm?
Yeah, when you cast this, it does the thing. Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah. Just trying to think of where it... Counters Eldrazi when you cast these things. Oh, so yeah, on cast triggers. So if a permanent has an on-cast trigger, because it's not a permanent in play yet, it would counter that. Interesting.
What card's this?
Just a custom card.
Oh, for fuck's sake! Welcome to Magic the Flavouring, the Magic the Gathering podcast, where we're talking about all things magic, flavour design, and lore. I'm your host, Andy Mann.
Hello, this is Nathan Cancel, and I was not ready.
Dragonstorm! It's quite good to be back, isn't it?
It is quite good to be back.
The story's out. The story's out today.
Yeah, the last story literally dropped, 5 hours ago?
This is the most,
We are.
on the shit we've ever been.
Yeah.
And if I'm not...
You've not even read it yet. Go and read it.
I think, well, I'm usually the last one to read it, out of the entire...
And also, by the time we post this, it's probably going to be giving people enough days.
Well, I'm going to try if I'm not...
out tonight.
Tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
No, not tonight. We're hanging out tonight.
That's true. We're not out tonight, but we are hanging out tonight.
I'm cutting that.
What?
I might even beep it just for fun. Just
good. Okay, that's
yeah,
better.
do you know what I mean?
I prefer that.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay. Cool.
Don't you censor me unless it's mildly.
Unless it's justified for the good of everyone listening to this podcast. 6 episodes.
Yes.
5 side stories.
Yeah, we're not touching the side stories.
We never do.
Each well, we every now and again I'll mention them if they're somewhat relevant. Like Ether Drift, I think the 2 side stories were quite relevant to the rest of the world building of the set.
Mm-hmm.
But this in particular, it's 5 individual stories about the clans one by one, because this story only really touches on 2. We get the point of view of the Jeskai, and then we get a little bit point of view of the Abzan, but that's basically it. We don't really get Tarkir as a whole, and it's quite nice that then the side stories kind of go into depth on each of the clans of kind of where they are now, what their day in the life of looks like, kind of interactions with the spirit dragons, which we also don't really see in the main story. So yeah, I mean, we're going to do the main story because it kind of goes to it goes to some places.
Yeah, right. Like there's been stories recently where, like, story arcs where, because it's such a high concept, we actually say things like, not a lot happened. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's a bank heist, or it's a race. And, things happen in there.
You
but,
can
like,
shorten it down really
the structure
easily.
of the story is pretty simple. Like Bloomburrow, for example, is a mouse goes from one town to the next one.
Yeah.
Right?
And then, oh, wait, there's a dragon.
This one's, all over the place.
Yeah, I think the actual story itself, if you were to, truncate it effectively, is basically these people go from this one place to this other one place. But all of the stuff that kind of happens in and around that is quite in-depth, and it's got different tangents that are all kind of converging at the same time, for better or for worse. We'll discuss as we get into it. But writer
Cassandra Core,
who did
Unbowed,
yes,
where Vivian Reed goes to Vampire Land on Ixalan.
Is it actually on Torrazon that she ends up going to?
Yeah,
right. So we actually have seen, because I sometimes think of I can't wait to go back to Ixalan and maybe we'll see the Vampire Land. We have actually already seen the Vampire Land.
You've got me doubting it now. Is it just an island off the shores of Torrazon?
It's still Torrazon, though, right? It's still the same
still
architecture.
there. It's still their territory.
It's still them, exactly.
Yeah. And they also did one side story for All-Be-One Cinders with big fists. I don't know what the name of the character is. I never know.
What?
It's a Mirren with big fists.
Niyali? Something like that? It's like Niyali or something like that. I don't know. I didn't buy that particular deck. I think it's something like Niyali. I'm going to look it up now.
Yeah, Niyali.
It is Niyali. Fucking had it.
Well done.
I don't know how I got that from the annals of my brain. But,
Annals.
I stand by my pronunciation.
So, not new to Magic, but I think like, I mean, to be given a standalone 3-parter to introduce a new Planeswalker is actually pretty big on
to
your,
have a really important story to handle with multiple, and this is always usually the thing, is multiple points of view of very important, very different characters, and a pretty huge culmination. It's quite a lot to take on, and I don't think done inappropriately. I think the language has been very good. I think that the structure, again, we might pick apart a little bit. I think it was a lot for one person to handle.
Because this is like the culmination of the Dragonstorm arc, right?
Uh-huh.
As much as like the story obviously will continue, this is that thing now done. And not only that, it's returning to a fan
Just like
favorite
how
plane.
like the Omen Paths are no longer a thing anymore.
Oh well, yeah,
the Omen Path arc's
fair.
over.
yeah. And indeed, an Omen Path was like the absolute crux of this entire story.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going back to a fan favorite plane, which is by what I mean a fan favorite plane, which was a plane that was before the Gatewatch. Every plane that happened before Magic Origins is a fan favorite plane.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Theros, Ravnica, Tarkir.
I suppose, yeah. I mean, I think Bloomburrow will definitely be up there with those.
Oh,
now.
sure, like now, yeah. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's just funny when people go, I can't wait to go back to the time before they really started fucking around with Magic. And it's like, yeah. So, yeah, pretty cool. I mean, look, I think there's so much going on in this story that you can pick it apart and kind of, we will rip some things apart and have a little look at them. But overall, I think there's something in this story for everyone. There's good action sequences, there's some good character-driven moments, and there's a lot of character bits. And I think what's going to happen over the next hour and a half is we're going to say, what the fuck happened here? But also, this was kind of cool. I think that's whereas, you know, sometimes with some stories you just kind of go, it really wasn't for me, you know.
I think also this is such a culmination that that it's no longer, I can't wait to see where this goes. It's now, do I think that this carried appropriately? Do I think that this flourish was effective? Do I feel like this conclusion is justified and satisfying? Or do I feel like, okay, this arc probably needed a little bit more of this, or this particular story could have probably been separated? It's that kind of, now we've got the full perspective on the arc.
Yeah.
And we're left with a load of tapers kind of flanging out into the far multiverse, and we know we're not going to touch on them for a fair while because the next big set is Edge of Eternities, which couldn't be further away from any of the things we're currently handling.
I mean, that quite literally.
Right? So it's kind of, now we can go, cool, a lot of these threads we might pick up next year, in 2 years, 3 years. Let's talk about how it landed now and whether or not we thought it was appropriate, considering we have literally read it, within the last 6 hours.
Yeah, for sure. So, 6 episodes. I've done the classic story synopsis.
Good.
Going to read through it.
Yes.
I've only done the first 5 episodes.
Yeah.
Because the last one I listened to at work today.
And we can get into, because I think that's the one we'll end up probably having not the most to say about, but we can talk about that on a microcosm a little bit more than say the rest of the story.
Sure. I mean, before we get into it, are you excited to be back on Tarkir? Is this for you?
So, I'm very much like, dragons be dragons.
Yeah, you're not a big dragon boy, are you?
No, it's funny because I have a Mirim deck where I only built it because I got FOMO from building my mate a Tiamat deck and went, if you get dragons, I should also get dragons. Which is an awful trait to have as a human being. So the thing I liked most about Tarkir was the implications of this changed timeline. And I liked this idea that we got to see a what if of the plane before they went, well, people didn't like that, we'll go back to... Well, actually, did people not like... People didn't like the fact that the dragons went away and then the dragons came back again?
I think at the time, people were annoyed that the clans got dismantled because people liked the clans.
Which is why I think we've now come full circle and they've gone, okay, we're back to the clans. I also think for a set's identity, to have those wedges, I think is quite important.
We don't get a lot of 3-colour planes.
And I've been thinking, I was like, well, the wedges don't feel very supported in the set. We've not got the set
yet. Yeah.
So
this is actually one of the rare... I mean, the release schedule's all over the fucking shop. This is one of the rarer times where they've just gone full story before really any of the colours, which is nice.
Well, because we keep getting random hints from sets in the future, like Final Fantasy and stuff. I keep forgetting that Tarkir hasn't actually really been spoiled at all.
The current standard set is Ether Drift.
Yeah, it's bizarre, isn't it?
I bought a pack of Ether Drift 2 days ago, and opened a fresh card I'd never seen before.
So strange. But so we don't. So I think it makes sense for them to do what they did. And I think my initial chagrin going into this was reading the Planeswalker's Guide, hearing about the World Soul Ritual.
Is that what it's called?
I generally don't think so. I think I've just
Dragon Soul. They do say it in the story.
Yeah, I mean, we could find it. Whatever. They do a big ritual thing basically to bring back. To try and quell the Dragonstorms, and what it ends up doing is bringing forth 5 spirit dragons that the 5 Khans in agreement kind of like, 'cause they do the ritual together, it has to be all 5 of them. They all give themselves into the spell, which then produces these spirit dragons that are kind of like a manifestation of dragon kind, but also of their Khan beliefs and their tenets and all of that kind of stuff. And that all fuses together. It is this big beacon to the Dragon Lords who, come out from their lavish thrones and things like that to kind of, and then they end up getting sucked back into the Dragonstorms. And that's what creates this whole, the Dragon Lords are gone, now the clans are back, and now we're also working within, with the dragons rather than against the dragons.
Yeah, it's an interesting dichotomy because whereas before the clans existed in the old timeline, remember this is a timeline that the characters as they are in the story have not lived through because their timeline was altered in Fate Reforged.
They have no idea of what the alternate was because a lot of them didn't even exist.
Exactly, but as the audience, we saw that the clans existed without dragons. That was the whole point. So now that they've got the dragons and the clans, it's like, what a crazy Tarkir world we live in.
And I think the idea that people kind of forget about the original Tarkir block was that neither timeline was sustainable. The Khans by themselves, everything was dying out because dragons inherently bring a certain magic and mysticism to the plane that without them, it's almost like the ecosystem, like the plane as a whole was dying. But then the alternative to that and having the dragons be coming with full gusto and Ugin not being able to kind of manage them meant that the dragons took over as, apex predators and being, much bigger and toothier and scalier and fierier than humans are. Or whatever of the
and much more narrow in their worldview as well.
Yeah, exactly. So it was almost like the clans kind of got stamped out because the dragons had this very imperialistic. This is, you do things how I do, and your meat for my meals, or your ancestor necromancy should be forgotten. All of this stuff was essentially like culture erasure. And then we've kind of done the reversal now of where we've kind of gone dragon kind of culture erasure from the Dragon Lord clan side of things, or the broods as they were, and now there is this kind of like half and half. And without seeing the set properly, because it doesn't go into that enough in the main story. The side stories do touch on it. We don't really have a perspective of how that's going to look within the grounds of the set. All of that to say, I think Tark is a really interesting plane. I was just a little bit annoyed that what sounded like a really cool story beat was kind of in a prologue that we never really got.
Yeah.
I understand why. Now we've read the six stories. I understand why they couldn't fit that in as well. And there is even a bit of that within the story, which is kind of an interesting twist that we'll look at. I'm excited to see the set now that I've read the story. I wasn't super fussed. And I didn't like this whole kind of like, we go back to Tarkir where all these dragon storms are happening. We still don't actually really get a real answer as to why the dragon storms were spreading across the multiverse.
No, not really.
We will probably get an answer to it in the, I don't know when we're next to Ugin or whatever, but clearly it had, actually there's a line in the very last story who says, without his presence, his dragon storms kind of went a little awry.
Yeah, but okay, we'll get there because, look... As everyone who listens to this podcast knows, we are not ones to tear apart writers specifically because there are pressures for artists outside of what they put in their art, be it time constraints, these story beats have to be in there, you have to push these characters, and also maybe sometimes they want to focus on things in the story that we don't want to fucking focus on, right? However, there is so much going on in this story in terms of wrapping up a whole bunch of shit. I do think Cassandra's had a tough time to really flesh out individual mysteries where we go, but that doesn't explain the thing.
Yeah, we don't get the proper answers, and to be fair, I don't know if they really had the space to be able to do so. They still had to introduce a bunch of new elements to justify some of the older elements, which I think then you kind of you lost the wood for the trees kind of thing sometimes, of where the focus on the little things like, hey, let's bring back this really cool character and investigate them. It's like, cool, but that could have happened on any plane without... and then not also ignoring this big story beat that we kind of need to have some metaphysical answer to. How are these things manifesting across planes?
Yeah.
And then if we don't get the answer now, how long are we going to have to wait before this arc's completion is actually complete?
Yeah.
Anyway, should we...
Let's dive into it.
Yes.
Episode 1. We open on a post-Dragon Lord era Tarkir, where two travelling performers attempt to depict the battle of the Khans against the Dragon Lords. No, not the Khanfall, but a recent battle in which the would-be Khans of the subjected brood clans rose up against the oppressors. So we're in this tavern. It's on the outskirts of a salt road that the Abzan... So the Abzan and the Mardu are the two kind of nomadic clans in Tarkir, and the Abzan are the ones who have the caravans and do all the trade and shit, whereas the Mardu run around kind of having fun and fucking. And it's these two performers who, clearly they're travelling because Narset, who is the POV for this, sort of says, okay, these two have accents and turn of phrase that kind of come from the different clans. Really hammering home that this kind of... Look, I'm going to use very broad terms here. Everyone can slap my cultural ignorance down, but my knowledge of Tarkir is that whole kind of Tibetan, Mongolian steppe part of the world, and each of the clans represent all the different kind of countries and cultures that kind of surround that massive kind of continental part of the world.
There's a little Asian, there's a little Middle Eastern.
Yeah, for sure. And so these guys have like lots of different turns of phrases, and in this tavern, as we'll see, there are all different representatives of the clans, which gives us pause immediately to be like, we're in a Tarkir where not only are the dragons kind of subjugated, but the clans are not necessarily constantly at war.
No, they're actually intermingling to the point of where the performer's language is a... I'm sure there's a technical word for it, but it's a hodgepodge of multiple different dialects, and it's a mix of both, which shows for however long we are past this, it never gives a number of years, but however long past the new order, shall I say, there has been a lot of cross-pollination. I think there's talk of a treaty that was like tenuously signed, and they're just kind of ironing out the kinks, and they're trying it. So there's camaraderie and joining of the clans rather than, as you say, to have all-out war, which I think ahead of the set, it looked like there was a lot of the clans are all fighting against each other, and I'm sure the set is probably going to look a lot more like that.
It's much easier to do like clan warfare as a set, isn't it?
But in the story, it's not really present at all.
Yeah. The Khans seemingly did this ritual via the sort of Dragon Soul world ritual. I'm going to call it Dragon Soul.
Soul makes sense.
That sounds like the thing. And they utilized a powerful Dragonstorm at the center of this ritual to eradicate the Dragon Lords. And it's as you described earlier, pouring themselves into it. Dragon Lords get sucked away into a void, all but destroyed as far as we know, and Spirit Dragons are born forth. The Spirit Dragons are closer to manifestations of the 3-colour clans rather than the 2-colour dragons, to kind of put it in simpler game mechanic terms. And the assorted audience, as we've discussed, is made up of different clansfolk. But they all seem to have different apocryphal ideas of what this Dragon Soul... Apocryphal's the word?
That's the word!
We were trying to think pre-record what word kept coming up. I mean, it's a suitable word.
In the first 2 episodes, I think it comes up maybe like 3 or 4 times, but it does make sense because a lot of like each clan would have their point of view and their own personal bias.
Yeah.
So it does work as a word. It's just funny how much it comes up in the first couple of episodes.
Some of the clans think the Dragon Lords got killed in a violent battle. Some of them think that they got blipped out of existence. Some of them think they're still around. Like, there's all these different ideas, but they all don't really know the truth. And it's telling that the Khans didn't necessarily tell them what the truth of it was.
Yeah.
All right. So, in this hodgepodge, we find the Waymaster Narset of the Jeskai. So she doesn't call herself Khan. She calls herself a Waymaster.
Waymaster's a very interesting specific...
Because it is the way.
I'd wonder, because I think we speak of the Khan... I think the Khan in... And I'm sure this is me not remembering everything from the Planeswalker guide, but I'm sure that each clan probably has its own defining of now they can just... They don't have to be Khans anymore, right? They can choose as they want to. I'm pretty sure the Abzan still use Khan as their
I think
moniker.
they do, yeah. Waymar of the Jeskai and his attendants and is able to give a first-hand account. So Narset from the POV sort of says that she likes being in the tavern because she kind of sees all the different people and she kind of slink away and observe people. So to kind of jump ahead to the rest of the story, Cassandra Core uses a lot of signifiers without necessarily outright stating it of Narset's autism. We know from having Narset in previous sets and previous character descriptions that it was a character that was depicted with a certain level of autism. And like I myself do not have autism. Neither do you. Diagnosed.
Not that I know of.
Yeah. My partner does, and so I'm not going to necessarily say like, I've got a friend who has autism, but like my knowledge of it comes mostly from her. So if I do fumble, I do apologise. But I think I have like a sort of tangential idea, right, of some of the terminology. And I think a lot of people were very pro Narset having sort of a different sort of social makeup, like in when they were first released, and people were like, oh, they're very representative. We had Magali Villeneuve. Do you remember when we interviewed her? And she said she had fans because she illustrated a lot of the original Narset arts. Fans coming up to her saying, oh, my daughter's got autism and it's wonderful that she's a character that has it in the story. But I do think other people, as with all things, were like, the representation's fine, but it's not quite right. And I think this story goes a long way. I mean, I could be wrong. I haven't seen backlash against it, but I think the story goes a long way to making it something where it's like, this is how this character would genuinely feel. Yeah.
There was lots of moments of where there was narratives said of where obviously they don't have the word, for autism within magic, within that kind of specific culture. And there's a lot of points that are made, a lot of internalizations, a lot of thought processes that you stop and pause, and you could just be like, cool, this is just Narset processing things.
Yeah.
If you know what you're looking for and you can hear it, you're like, oh, this is a really good explanation of how someone who's autistic might view this situation or might have this certain perspective. And as we'll talk about a little bit later, it's kind of interesting when that then finds itself opposite someone who is lacking emotion or doesn't necessarily have a normal human social interaction. And then it's kind of funny, not funny, sorry, it's engaging to see these two different types of mind kind of bounce off of each other, and then how they play off of each other's insecurities and things like that. It's very nice to see.
So Narset's kind of happy sitting and watching the play, even though she knows that they're kind of getting it wrong. But it's when all the different clans start arguing and the noise levels in the bar start getting too much, and she gets distressed because the social situation's getting uncomfortable for her.
Palms into her eyes, I think, is the
description.
Is the description, yeah.
And then she feels compelled to start saying what actually happened. We don't get too much into it because she gets cut off because a messenger tells her from the Jeskai that there is a woman with wings and glowing eyes back at the monastery.
Oh, who could that be?
It's Elsbeth.
Oh, of course.
Elsbeth Tyrell, who's now an angel.
Of course,
lest we forget.
An
archangel.
Yeah.
An archangel.
Yeah, so who kind of just blipped into the end of the Avishkar, Aether Drift story, and then just went, so I'm dealing with the dragons, bye. And I think, before we get into episode 2 and start talking about her, it is interesting to me that we don't see, either the threat is so bad that she's like, gonna do it now, but it's interesting that she hasn't gone and tried to find anyone else to kind of join her, and I get there are, it's very clear from her point of view that she doesn't need the help, and she doesn't kind of rely... Like, her thing is...
She doesn't expect the help either.
No, but she considers this new life of hers as a gift from Sarah and something that, she needs to be giving back to the people, right? It's like she has the strength and the will to help, so she should. But it's interesting that she didn't try to at least enroll any other particular planeswalkers. I mean, there aren't very many left, But it's interesting that didn't happen. If she didn't go, oh, by the way, I also had this other person that I thought I'd look into... It's going it alone against the Dragonstorms feels mildly foolhardy, and it might be one of the few character flaws I think that Elspeth has of where she's like, you can lean on others, and by the end of this, maybe she does learn her lesson. Who knows?
Well, as we will see, on the Jeskai Skyship Monastery, I'm going to say that again. The Jeskai have a Skyship Monastery.
It's like not Castle Vantra, it's Castle Lochthwain, but like even cooler.
It's got big kite sails.
Yeah, and it sits in this like caldera of like fog and smoke and stuff. It's
called Storm Crane.
So cool.
The artwork's very cool. So on the Jeskai Skyship Monastery, Storm Crane, badass. After reminiscing with each other of their shared friends Ajani and the Story Circle, Elspeth tells Narset of the Dragonstorms raging across the plains, and Narset reveals that whilst the dragons of the old brood are no longer a threat, now the Dragon Lords are gone, the new wild dragons on the plain are dangerous and far more feral than anything they have known. So this was one of your issues when we started seeing previews for like some concepts. You were like, not fussed about Tarkir, they've kind of muddied the waters with the dragons, because the dragons of Tarkir they weren't just distinctive to the plane. They were the plane.
They also had 5 distinctions of themselves. I like you had the feathered Jeskai, the super armored Abzan. You had the super horny, not in that way, Tima or Atarka. Sorry,
yeah.
And then Silumgar were all like slithery, snaky.
They were
kind
poison
of
dragons. Yeah.
And obviously each of them had their own different breaths. Which one am I missing?
You mentioned the Colligan.
And then exactly, and who are super lightning, kind of similarly feathery, but more leathery, feathery.
They're like big dinosaurs.
Yeah, exactly. And they all had their own specific traits. You could very much go, that dragon is from this particular brood.
Yeah.
And they have these particular traits.
Yeah.
Whereas in this story, it goes into great repetition of saying that they get wilder and wilder.
Yeah.
Some of the pictures you see is like someone who's breathing out sand.
Yeah.
And it's like how does that even anatomically make sense?
There's a dragon at the end of the story that the face is described as just being from a nightmare.
Yeah.
And you're like, fuck.
I want to see this.
Yeah. Well, I think there is not. I think in the story there's an artwork of one, and like it doesn't even look like a dragon. But like I think this was something that maybe, I think without context, you kind of go, look, this is the dragon plane, and you fucked it by making the dragons just kind of wibbly wobbly spaghetti monsters.
Especially like the spirit dragons, it's like cool. So they're not even like corporeal, they're kind of like a little bit, because they're all influenced by their clans as well. So it's kind of like it made them all look quite generic when we saw all of the artwork for the different commander decks. For me, there wasn't enough of a difference. There were elements of the Abzan armor in the Abzan one and things like that, and obviously the Jeskai one has like a million ribbons coming off.
Yeah.
And they do look individually quite cool, but they're so disparate from what my expectation of what the Tarkir dragons would look like. And then also to know that then the wild dragons have an even greater varied variety and spread of different forms and functions and sizes. Some of them are supposed to be the size of cats, whereas I'm pretty sure by the end of it we hear about one who towers over the horizon. And it's like, for me, that does make it more... it does create like greater interest in my mind about the dragons, but it does kind of diminish a little bit of that particular identity that Tarkir had.
Elsbeth implores Narset to share any knowledge she has about the dragon ritual, as Elsbeth believes Tarkir is at the centre of this threat. So Elsbeth's obviously been going around tracking these Dragonstorms and has put 2 and 2 together and been like, where does the dragons live? She's gone back to Tarkir, right? But at that moment, the skyship is attacked by a wild dragon. And after Elspeth and the monks fight off the dragon and succeed in killing it, the Jeskai take stock of the damage done to them and their ship. So there's this whole sequence where the monks kind of kick into action, but they're protecting their young, because the monastery that they're on is like a training ground for like the kind of the uber elite kids.
It's a school.
Yeah. So they want to protect them, and this is a dragon that breathes ice. This is an ice dragon, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's got its face up through the hull of the
So
boat.
after they've defeated the dragon, they're taking stock of all the damage. Narset doesn't commit to helping Elspeth that day, but does offer her an answer the following morning. She shows her to her room, and this is one of those first interactions, as we were talking about, where Narset, who has to learn how social interactions work because of how she approaches social interactions, as we discussed, comes up against someone who is almost an alien.
Yes.
So all of those things that Narset, being a learned person and friendly, and someone who's like interested in things, just happens to have autism. She's go, cool, I have learned how these social interactions go. This is how I want to react to things.
Mm-hmm.
And then she kind of goes, hey, Elspeth, buddy, here's a room, chill out. And Elspeth's just like, yeah, cheers.
Yeah.
He's like,
why are you giving this to me? Shouldn't you give this to someone else? And I was like, it's like trying to learn from a book written in white handwriting.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm sure there are words in there somewhere, but I can't see them.
And it's excellent. And like, it's funny because I think in previous sets and previous stories, this is a very different Narset, I think, to obviously the ones that we've seen before. Because either we've dealt with Narset of the Jeskai from Old Tarkir, where she was like the enlightened monk, and she was at the pinnacle of her powers with all 3 colours of mana at her disposal, and she was very aloof and very sort of like, I'm Super Shaolin, fuck you. And then when we had Dragons of Tarkir Narset,
she was super devout to Ojai.
Super devout to Ojai.
Still comes through a lot in this.
And this is the same Narset, technically, as a character, right? And so this is a Narset who's incredibly friendly, incredibly keen to learn, and trained to learn from masters, whereas Narset Enlightened from Khans of Tarkir was actually maybe a bit more arrogant and a bit more like, I'm super cool. This Narset is friendly and kind of like bubbly and excited for knowledge, but kind of is maybe a little bit lost without her old master, whilst knowing that she's in a better world for it.
She's also older than either of the Narsets we saw before.
Now,
and this isn't us doing our...
Now, what's the... There's a 3-colour Narset Planeswalker. The one where she's doing the kick.
Yes, the one that's on Ikoria.
Yeah.
Of the Secret Way. Or the
yes,
Secret
that's
Path,
exactly it. She's like in her 40s there. So we had this old theory with Orthos Mike that there was multiple Narsets running around because of the timey-wimey shit. Because this card from Ikoria showed like a middle-aged Narset.
I think
and she's not middle-aged in this story.
It's the Arlencord effect of her. I feel like any artist drawing a woman over the age of 30 can sometimes struggle to make them look not like they're 60.
But Arlencord was like in her 40s, right?
Yeah, and I think, but some of them made her look a little bit like
a
younger,
grandma.
And some of them made her look like Jaya,
like
almost.
A hot aunt.
Yeah. Exactly. So it's kind of like there is a massive amount of artistic interpretation there.
It's the Aunt May effect, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like somehow she keeps getting younger and younger. Whatever. And I think that it's at this point we're past the point of that being a found theory. I think a theory you can probably put any more stock in.
Oh, I know. It's a shame. It was a good theory.
It is a shame.
And also far more interesting than some of the stuff we've got. I think. Do you know what I think? I'm gonna have my cake and eat it too. I think they absolutely were dropping hints that they were going to do something like that, and then someone in the writers' room went, timey-wimey shit's really confusing.
Also, do you know how we've got all this dragon shit that we need to... Let's have this Dragonstorm arc. We haven't really got time for your cool...
multiple Narsets.
It doesn't... That would have been cool if they did books, like novellas. Then that might have been like... Narset could have had her own novella where she finds a version of herself, and then the two of them are like weirdly...
Clan of Narsets.
That would have been quite fun.
Anyway, let's move on. This Narset, I think, must be in her 30s. I don't think she's old Narset. Anyway, that night, Tygam comes to visit Narset.
Yes.
So
I don't know how to feel about this guy, because he was a twat and then not a twat.
Well, no. He's always been a twat.
Okay,
so,
good.
So Tygam's one of these characters where when we went from Khans of Tarkir to Dragons of Tarkir, they did this with a couple of characters where they showed them in different modes based on the outcomes of history.
And he was in an entirely different clan.
So Tygam was in the Sultai.
Yeah, so DC's hand, I think they called him. Right?
Yeah. But he was a Jeskai monk who turned to the Sultai.
Yes.
And the Sultai, at that point, were kind of pitched, just for the sake of ease of storytelling, as like the evil Jeskai.
Bad guys.
They're the bad guys, right? Because they're the Black Aligned clan, whatever. Even though there's 2 other Black Aligned clans and they seem to be not the bad guys. But whatever, we move. And then in Khans of Tarkir, he has another character card in a commander deck where he's still part of the Ojutai, so ostensibly the Jeskai way, right? But I think his story, because he was the lieutenant of that deck, and if I'm not wrong, in those commander decks at the time, I haven't bought one recently, they had a little blurb in the insert which told them about the characters of each of the lieutenants and commanders, right? And I seem to remember that one, this is me now making all this up, I seem to remember there being a story blurb about this card where Tygam's like, he just missed out on being like Ojutai's number 1 to Narset.
Yeah.
And he is in the stories for Dragons of Tarkir, because I remember I reread them like a couple of years ago, and he is basically Narset's main rival.
Yeah, he was in the Khanful story, I believe. Yeah.
And he's a dick.
Yeah,
because he's like, I'm the best. Ojutai's like number 1. I'm number 1 to Ojutai. I'm the biggest and the strongest, and I'm the most devout.
I guess the other way.
And then Narset pipped him.
I guess also like. So when the dragons died out, his ambition drove him to the Sultai, whereas when the dragons didn't, he was like, okay, I was still... Because his favourite text for Tygam's scheming is the Jeskai would have me bow in restraint, so I found people unafraid of true power.
Yeah.
Obviously, that would have all been curtailed by Ujustai, but
Yeah.
it's still under the surface.
Oh, no, 100%.
And we still don't... We'll get to it. We still don't necessarily know what his intent is now.
But when he comes to Narset here, at this point in the story, he's giving her advice. Narset, does understand not only is Tygam not necessarily her friend, but that she essentially stole his job as Ojutai's number 1. And even there are hints in the sort of phrasing of it where she goes, Ojutai picked her as a favourite. So she even understands it's not necessarily because she's better at fighting than him or more of like a devout monk than he is.
It was because she was like, I really like knowledge. And
and Ojutai was like,
okay,
sick,
cool.
rather than power,
Yeah.
which is what Tygam was about. So Tygam comes to her and basically says, this latest Dragonstorm, which produced this ice dragon that attacked our ship, too tightly coincides with the fact that Elsbeth, this angel's come. So we need to send her away, otherwise the Dragonstorms are going to target us. And she doesn't disagree with him. She tries to go, well, the Dragonstorms are around.
It's a possibility.
Yeah.
It's like, because she goes, well, it's not necessarily true that is the case. And he goes, yes, but it's not necessarily true that is not the case. And Narset goes, yeah, fair clap.
Yeah, so the next morning, Narset tells Elspeth that she can't join them as the clan. She needs to protect the clan. She can't have the dragons getting involved.
But she has a bag on her shoulder.
Yeah, she's going to leave Tygam ostensibly in charge of the clan, and she's going to go and help Narset. She knows Elspeth, because she knows it's the right thing.
Girl's going to go and get it done.
Exactly. Episode 3. A Johnny Goldmane.
Of course.
He's fucking around.
Yeah,
Why?
He's a planeswalker. He can be wherever he wants.
Oh yeah, of all the people deserving of his own spark, that cunt.
Wow, you're not an Ajani apologist.
Do you know what? When he got turned by Phyrexia in Dominaria United,
Andy has folded his arms at this point, by the way, just to make extra
cross
dramatic
legs, folded
point.
arms, phone on my knee. I despised the reaction from the fandom where so many voices went, why would they do this to
Not
a
my
Johnny?
kitty!
And I was like, go back and listen to those Dominaria United
Grow up!
Go back and listen to those Dominaria United episodes, because I'd go into it then, and I was just like, get fucked. Absolutely, you need to let your characters die. You need to let them falter and fail, otherwise there's no jeopardy. And then the fact that they
No one gives a shit about Gideon.
he folded and failed and died, did the Phyrexian thing, looked fucking cool whilst he was doing it, and then they just give him back his fucking spark.
It's the negate artwork, isn't it?
Yeah.
A lot of it's just the negate.
We mentioned it at the time.
Yeah, it's so like, oh, never mind. It's like it was all a dream.
Yeah. Hey.
And I do have to say that this story does do a decent bit of going, cool, let's justify that a little bit.
Now.
However, I'm still like, why the fuck is this guy here?
Right. I think Cassandra Core does an excellent job of basically taking my despising of this situation and going, "Yep," and Ajani knows it too.
He's
like,
very,
fair enough.
He's very aware. Like,
Yeah.
there's even a quote.
I can't fault Ajani. I just,
There's even a quote in later where he said where they write about him smiling a wicked grin. And I'm like, oh, you really wanted you wanted to play homage to he's smiling his Leonine smile or whatever it is. It's kind of like there is a wink, wink, nudge, nudge to this story. I think. Yeah.
So Ajani's on the plane. He's hunting some gazelle because there are gazelles on Tarkir.
Why not? Why not any of the other things we've already found on the plane that is interesting? Which a gazelle.
And he observes the wildness of the new dragons versus the traditional Tarkir ones. After he claims his prey, so he's been hunting gazelle because obviously he's a fucking cat, remember? So he's a lion.
I'm just imagining him on all fours, wiggling his little bum, and then pouncing.
After he takes his prey back to camp, we see that he is actually a guest of the Abzan. So the Abzan have taken him in. This is one of those things which does get yada-yada'd. We get no... Why is he there? Why is he with the Abzan? Why are they giving him therapy? Don't get me wrong, everyone should be in therapy, but is this something that the Abzan always did?
I don't think so. I think when they describe it, it's not necessarily therapy. They don't... Because he's useful, he's a really good hunter and all that kind of stuff, which to nomads is really important, resource management, blah, blah, blah. And he wants to be left alone, which even works better for the nomads of like, I call it, we'll just let this guy who's really strong and powerful and kills things for us, we'll just let him sit over in his hut by himself and wallow in self-pity, And that's kind of what they did, just they gave him a space to be that was far away from things that reminded him of the things and people that he'd let down.
Yeah.
Which I think, of all the clans, I imagine the Abzans probably be the most welcoming.
Yes, because they revere the past whilst also looking to the future.
And they're also the ones who have to like scrap it as more like they're not like the Marjorie's like keep up or die. They're like
the Abzan are defensive, they protect.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So he's worried about his behaviour. His behaviour. So, you a naughty
boy.
His experiences with the Phyrexians, because obviously he got turned by us.
Also, doesn't it make sense because he's a green-white planeswalker and they're the green-white clan, and he had a hint of black fuzz of Phyrexia, and they're the Abzan.
That's actually quite good.
Right?
I'll choose to believe that. We see that a Djinni now. Djinni.
Right, yeah.
Is it not Jin?
I think it's Djinni.
No. But is Djinni...
I think you could
Where's
be...
that word come from?
I guess it's just the...
Is
the
that
way...
now what we say?
I think within Magic you can go... We use enough races and things or words within real worlds that they can then go... How can we conjunct it and colloquialise it?
Interesting.
To make it feel more
I'd be
normal?
interested, because I know Jin is the word, but I've never heard Djinni before. Anyway, a Djinni named Nur is the latest of the Abzan to take an interest in Ajani, because he's had a revolving door of therapists. And the two banter back and forth about repentance, atonement, life, death, with Nur trying to guide Ajani to move past his experiences under the Eldranorn's control. We go back to Elspeth and Narset, who are travelling to the Crucible. So the Crucible is an area of Tarkir which was basically the nexus of, no pun intended, of Ugin's magic. Am I right?
Yeah, Crucible of the Spirit Dragon.
Yeah. This is where I did read all of the Tarkir stories. And this whole little section still kind of confuses me as to what the fuck's going on.
Well, yeah, this is where Bolas and Ugin had their battle, where Ugin was slain, and that's where he fell.
Crucible, yeah.
And then, so the Crucible of the Spirit Dragon is what it was called after he came back.
Yeah.
Because when all the Hedrons, once they do the timey-wimey thing and they go back with the Hedron key and it puts them in a big Hedron stasis iron lung thing, that's then the Crucible.
Yeah.
Before that, and then obviously the Ugin's Nexus is the Nexus that runs through his dead body in the previous timeline when he's dead.
Do you know one of the problems of going back to a fan favourite plane is, especially when it's just one set, is that you have to really just rely on the fact that people know what the fuck is going on.
But also then don't go into it too deeply in case people don't know what the fuck is going on. Because it's a long time. Like, it's been a long time since the M19 stories.
6 years.
And then it was another 5 years or so before then that we were in Tarkir the last time. So the average player of the game is not going to have played original Tarkir or been around when original Tarkir was happening. The average player probably wasn't around during M19, and we got all of this backlog story arc about Ugin and Bolas, So for the average person, this is all just yada yada history stuff that could just be the same made up stuff that we heard from the original planes when they had to kind of yada yada the history for us as well. So it's a real hard middle ground to strike of where you're paying homage dutifully, but then you're also not getting too hung up on it.
So, Narset and Elspeth goes to the Crucible, which is the site of Uggin's magic on Tarkir, and the site of the latest Dragonstorm ritual, right? So that was where they did the Dragonstorm ritual, was that the Crucible? Cool. Another bit of a yada yada. Narset relives her battle with the Dragon Lords, so we still don't get the full story, but it's clearly something that Narset's not totally thrilled about what happened. And actually we do get, at this point, we've had a couple of bits where we do understand that Narset, along with Tygam, both slightly regret the fact that Ojutai isn't around anymore. Out of all the 5 Dragon Lords, Ojutai was probably the most giving to his subjugates.
And that is saying something, because he did basically go, fucking do what I say or die.
Yeah, but he was still willing to teach them something, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So as they approach, the two hear a voice on the wind that says, "Those who seek find a way. Come to the temple where the truth awaits."
Isn't this an interesting thing? Because we don't really, by the end of the story,
find out
who this is.
No,
I reckon it's the voice from the Ozolith. Fuck it.
It's
Lindell.
It's Oko.
Fuck it. Why not?
The pair land and discuss where this temple may be when a man approaches them. What a man as well. It's a desparked Sarkhan Vol.
Because everyone's just in the exact same place. Planes are only city-sized.
Like, he doesn't even come out. They don't even go to, like, oh, there's a fucking house down there. They actually land, and then some dude is just there, and it's Sarkhan.
And it's also interesting because I don't think we really get a moment of Elspeth and Sarkhan being like, you know, like the clicky finger pointy thing from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, because they were both on original Alara.
Yeah.
And it was himself, Elspeth, and Ajani. And then obviously Wallace came in Conflux.
There's another one as well who isn't there. There was someone who's not in this story that was on Alara.
Really? Am I forgetting?
I saw a meme about it today.
I'm forgetting a planeswalker. Gonna check it out. Alara Planeswalker.
Because there's definitely one that's not in this story.
Tezzeret!
Yeah.
There we go.
Oh, he's in
it's
space.
Always Tezzeret. I was going to say Tezzeret. I was like, it can't be Tezzeret. And it was the original Tezzeret not in the Infinite Consortium. No, it was the Infinite Consortium on Esper. Yeah. Of course it was Tezzeret. It's always Tezzeret.
Sarkhan looks like shit.
Yeah, bless his heart.
What's happened?
So, you know how most planeswalkers have just been like, oh, I lost my soul. Oops.
Yeah.
Who gives a shit? Sarkhan has not taken it very well. Sarkhan's like, you have ripped from me the thing that makes me me.
Well, he can still turn into a dragon.
But his body
barely.
doesn't fucking want to. And he's like, it used to embrace and rejoice in the transformation. Whereas now it's not only difficult, it's like his body wants to roil back into its, as he says, his fleshy puppet form. Like, he hates being a human.
Yeah.
And it's a massive shame, because the last time we saw him...
3 colours.
Excluding his brief stint in the War of the Spark, when he was on Amonkhet.
Oh, right. Well, yeah, whatever.
And even then, he was still, like, you know, a decent guy, weird shaman guy who's a little bit... guy's into dragons a bit too much.
Yeah,
but then before then, it was like, hey, I've got my rogue streak in. I'm all...
He's team of colours.
I figured it out.
He's loving it.
I'm all life right now.
He looks healthy. He's eating well.
And now he's a tramp.
Yeah. He's back to being Sarkhan and
happened? And I'm kind of glad, because as much as I know you're going to be like, you've ruined my boy, I am glad that there is a realistic... Because if I was a planeswalker...
Yeah.
I wouldn't just be like Tyra and be like, there's less battles to fight now on all the planes. It's like kind of nice. I get to focus on my own plane. And even Narset says within this, it's like, as much as she laments not having the spark anymore, not having to worry about anything other than Tarkir is great, because it allows you to focus on it. I mean, look at how Chandra is. It's like, even though she really cares about Avishkar and everything, she still like cares about what's happening outside of the plane she's on. And that kind of burden of responsibility that the Gatewatch originally was kind of tackling, that kind of thought process before they got all Avengerified, is an interesting thing to think about. And it is a dialogue that we could have maybe tackled a little bit greater in the wake of not having planeswalkers much. So I'm glad we get the other side of the coin, compared to everyone just being like, hey, don't worry about it, everything's cool, now I can be your commander.
Well, yeah, I suppose, I mean, you've already said it quite eloquently, but I suppose having a character that was always card for card bouncing between being sort of tormented and a bit deranged to being healthy again. One of his cards is
literally Sarkhan the Mad.
Yeah.
He was the first only negative planeswalker.
But it's really quite fucking horrible how this character has gone from being like, I'm doing okay, to being like, nope, you're back in the pits of despair.
And it only gets worse as the story goes on. Like, this isn't like a redemption arc in any way, shape, or form.
Sarkhan seems halfway back to madness, talking of how the multiverse will soon all be dragons. This attitude prompts a fight. This attitude prompts a fight between all three of them. obviously.
I've just remembered what happened.
Well, Narset and Elspeth kicks his ass.
Elspeth just fucking sucker punches him in the chest, and he just drops, and
But
they just walk off and leave.
Well,
him.
no, but no. So what actually happens is she fucking does him in.
Yeah.
He's a little bit of a bitch, and he fucking stabs her in the back when she's like, stay down. And then Narset has to finish him off and then heals Elspeth, but she doesn't really need it.
Oh, is that? Okay, I definitely truncated that to being that Elspeth's like, you better not, and someone's like, okay, I won't, and then he goes to, and so she turns around and just goes to the chest.
Oh, was it she stabs him? Something happens.
Yeah, she punched him with her mauled fist.
Oh no, but I think it's because he tries to shank.
He was trying.
No, I think he actually does shank her, but like underhandedly.
Bastard.
Yeah. Anyway.
Okay, never mind.
They walk off and leave him there.
They just leave him there.
Now, right, so this happens in a lot of media. We're only on episode 3. We've got to speed up. But this happens in a lot of media, right? When 3 characters have some sort of battle in some sort of fantasy or sci-fi thing, and then they cut to they've knocked whoever out,
4 hours later,
and now they're like more on their journey. Say if you and me were in a mortal death struggle, and you laid me out, and then you walked away. 2 minutes later, I'm getting back up.
Yeah.
You're not, like, more than 200 metres away.
Yeah. But then also, if I just laid you out, would you be like, oh, better go and get that guy who just knocked me down?
Yeah, fair enough, fair point. So does that mean then on the camera that's not on you, the narrative camera sits back to me and I'm just sat down going like, oh, well, I'll let them get away. Like, that doesn't happen either.
There's a bit of pathetic fantasy with narrative where you have to kind of go, cool, well, that's not our POV, so we'll come back to that next week.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
As Elspeth and Narset walk away, a hooded figure approaches Sarkhan, claiming he has something he wants. It's Tygam!
Oh! This is such a random story beat thing. This is
how did he find them?
This is things need to happen for the things later to happen. Yeah. It's very yada yada, these people. It's the Ajani thing. At the beginning, my question is, why is Ajani here? By the end of the story, I know why he's here. It doesn't justify why he's there any better, but at least he served a function.
Yeah.
Same thing here. Why Sark and Bramley bump into them? He didn't need to bump into them at all.
Yeah.
Apart from that, I think there's one interaction later where they go, I told you this would happen, and I told you this would happen. Apart from that, Tygam and Sarkhan could have just done this isolated, completely separately, and it would have been a much bigger kind of cool, like, holy fuck, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah.
Instead of going like, hey, here's Sarkhan, let's shit his character into the dust. For no reason.
Yeah.
Randomly, contrivably meet this random other person who was actually just talking to Narset over here about.
Did Tygam follow them?
I guess so, but nothing's ever said of it. And then he's also got a really strong agenda, which isn't hinted at all originally, and doesn't really follow through. This is Tygam, not Sarkhan. Sarkhan doesn't have an agenda. His agenda is dragon. That's it.
Yeah.
Whereas Tygam's agenda, we don't really see, but there's clearly like machinations and like a ploy and a plot, and none of it's fleshed out. None of it's even really spoken about.
Sarkhan and Tygam stalk a young dragon. So this is now the end of the story. That story is like they say, hey, we're going to team up. The opening of the next story is the two of them are on the hunt of a young dragon. We don't know why yet. They stalk a young dragon, and Sarkhan reflects that both he and Tygam have lost something in their past, but that the fall of the Dragon Lords or something deeper, i.e. a different timeline. So Sarkhan is himself aware of the change of the timeline because he was instrumental of it happening.
I mean, I think he's probably one of the few that that is
he
aware
was
of
the
it.
Nexus of Fate.
Do we know that? I mean, Narset probably knows, but I don't think she's aware, right?
Narset's only knows because in the Dragons of Tarkir storyline, she finds the scroll which details the different timeline, right? Because the dragons are also
otherwise Sarkhan's probably the only person other than Ugin who's aware of both things happening. Yeah.
So, but Tygam clearly, obviously, as we've spoken about, kind of regrets the whole kind of way that's shaken down with the Dragon Lords. It transpires that Tygam knows of a ritual that can restore Sarkhan's dragon transforming powers. Not his spark, but his ability to turn into a dragon. And Sarkhan must eat the heart of a wild dragon, which is why they're stalking a dragon. They get into a tussle with it. He kills it, eats the fucking heart, and becomes his.
Yeah, we kind of downplay the fact that Sarkhan, even in his flesh puppet form, still just dominates.
Killed a dragon.
Just dominates a dragon.
There's a lot of writing at this point in the story. There's been about 2 or 3 different dragon battles, and every time Cassandra
really goes into it.
The fucking gore spills out, the warmth of the blood hisses on the floor, and you're like, fuck it.
We completely skirted over with the frost dragon that's coming through the hull of the Jeskai ship that Elspeth is in its mouth, carving out flesh from its mouth. And it's
there's a lot of that, though.
It's like, how is this dragon okay? And it's not. But it's also like, it also just the next sentence, like, it's just up and about, flaming. And it's like,
it's a dragon.
I know, I get it. But there's a lot of, as you say, there's a lot of explicit. I mean, this story, or all of these stories, are very descriptive.
Yeah, it's very Tolkien-esque.
You get a really good image of what is happening in these stories.
So he has to eat the heart of a dragon to get his dragon powers back, which he does. Beep, boom, boom, full stop, move on. We rejoin Narset and Elsbeth. Here's another little time skip. Who have been captured by the Abzan.
Of course, yeah.
No build up to that.
Apparently it was they were walking across the border, and then the border guys went, "Hey, you shouldn't be doing it." And then the two guys went, "But the treaty." And then they were like, "What treaty?"
Yeah.
And to be fair, that is a cool point, because Narset starts saying, "Well, didn't we all agree on this thing?" And then checks herself and we're going, "Oh well, some clans agreed stronger than others, and we are kind of just testing the boundaries."
Yeah, no one's actually written.
And even the Abzan guards went, "I know you've said this, and yeah, you're probably right, but we
job.
Still kind of got to take you in for questioning."
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Narset and Elsbeth are therefore brought before the Abzan Council of Houses. So we get a bit more of a fleshed out thing. We had quite a few stories with the Abzan last time we did Tarkir stories, but this is obviously, when we ever go back to Planes, they kind of build on the world building. And it seems like the Abzan of Tarkir, whilst also having the affinity for their ancestors, also have like families of houses, which makes sense. Yeah. And they're each in charge of different aspects of how the place is run, so the defense, the water, the food, whatever. And they all basically sit on a council that decide everything. They all have Entmoots.
Yeah.
Right?
I think of all the clans, it's interesting that the Jeskai, I've realised that I say interesting in this podcast so often, and when I notice
it's all interesting. We're interested in Magic the Gathering.
I know. It's interesting that I've noticed it. But the two clans that had the most fleshing out, in my mind, the Jeskai and the Abzan, last time in terms of Khanful and how they interacted with their Dragon Lords and things like that, the fact that they had to get rid of their necromantic ancestry, and then obviously the spirit trees and all of that kind of thing. And then obviously the Jeskai having being the crux of which Khanful all fell around.
Yeah.
It's funny that we're getting more of those two within the main story. It kind of makes sense, because if you do read all of that story and then go into this one, you don't have to worry about the fluff of the other three clans.
I also think, just societally, and just because of them not being the quote-unquote the bad guys, I think there are much better hero clans. Like the Sultai, they're all just duplicitous and trying to get out for each other.
Even though apparently they're very not that anymore, which I would actually be interested to maybe talk about the side stories at a future time.
The Mardu are just hedonistic anarchists, so they can't really drive a story. Their story is that they just have fun.
And the team actually have probably one of the more interesting stories because of the M19
Well, the team work best, I think, in those M19 stories, because they are most transferable, just because they are shamanistic. They're magic.
Kind of, yeah.
Whereas if you're going to have two clans that kind of drive a story of like righteousness and heroism, the stoic, logical Jeskai and the good-hearted, we're all in this together, Abzan. I think they're the best ones to do it with.
Also, I think most of the Atarkans were eaten, so there aren't many of them left.
Yes. So Narset and Elsbeth are brought before the Abzan Council of Houses, and their new Khan, Felathar, a former soldier turned ruler, who is beloved by everyone apparently. Elsbeth sees this as a time sink, so Elsbeth doesn't want to be there. She thinks that it's a waste of time, but Narset is keen to preserve the clan peace and wills the angel to spell some time explaining their cause rather than just kind of killing them all and walking away.
Elsbeth literally gives Narset 1 hour.
Yeah, she's like, I'm going to kill all these motherfuckers.
We have 1 hour.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're moving.
However, the bureaucratic Abzan Council descends into arguments, and during the debate, Ajani bursts in, bringing word of a huge Dragonstorm approaching the Abzan fortress.
Yes, a dragon that eclipsed the horizon. Yeah. And it turns out, because I guess we don't know that Sarkhan succeeds.
We don't know at this point that it's Sarkhan.
We also, we don't quote unquote know that he succeeds at the end of his story either. Just that he buries his face into the heart, takes a big thing, and there's a lot of these and then moments of where obviously we're going to cycle back round to it.
At its head, a huge red dragon that he suspects to be Sarkhan Vol. Oh no, it is at this point in the story that he kind of goes, "Is that you, Sarkhan?
Is that you, friend?"
The Leonin also pauses to reconnect with his old friends. And confront his new reality in the multiverse. So this is the first time that Narset has seen Ajani in a long time. This is the first time since All Will Be One that Elsbeth has seen Ajani, and Elsbeth and Ajani were on opposing sides in that conflict.
Yeah, and Ajani obviously... So there is very much this... Ajani used to be Elspeth's mentor, and they had this very friendly kind of like almost, I don't want to say fatherly, but there's almost like there's a very familial relationship between the two of them. And obviously he's been a Phyrexian and then has ostracized himself, and now she an Archangel.
Yeah.
So now it's really hard for them to reconcile all this maelstrom of fucking feelings and emotions and history.
Especially when Elspeth doesn't really have any feelings or emotions anymore.
And especially when Ajani's trying to deny his.
Yeah.
And it's this is another situation between someone who's autistic and someone who's incapable of human emotion. And then you've got someone who's incapable of human emotion, but it has the memories of what they used to feel, with someone who's trying to hide away from the emotions they are actually feeling.
Yeah.
That kind of psychological interaction, that is cool.
Well, it definitely highlights a situation in which things can be said in ways that like other people would kind of struggle to say them, or like expressions that are new and interesting in a way that's like, we have this angel who she clearly does have emotions because she has flashes of them, but it's almost like they're kind
muted.
of they're the memories of emotion, as you said. So it's an interesting way of like kind of developing like, how does someone who has detached themselves from the rest of the multiverse react when the only other being in the multiverse they feel attached to is in front of them.
And also it's kind of, we never get this from one person. We get the one person assuming the thing of the other person, but then we also get the point of view of the other person confirming or denying it and then assuming back in the other direction. So it's actually a very equal and well-measured story in terms of characterization.
Episode 5, the Abzan elect not to help Elspeth.
What a shocking surprise.
Much like the Jeskai, and turn to their defences of the Dragonstorms. Ajani also reflects on their invitation to join their quest. So they say to Ajani, look, do you want to come along? And he's like, nah, bruv, I'm fine.
Let's get the band back together. Remember the conflux?
Narset and Elspeth work to absolve Ajani of his misdeeds as a Phyrexian, but the shame is too great for him. The pair go to the centre of the Dragonstorms and find that there is a literal temple, which is something that they made a joke about themselves in an earlier story, where they're like, oh, is it going to be like an actual temple? And they're like, oh, fuck, it's an actual temple, which is what the voice told them.
And also, if it wasn't for the voice, they ain't finding this shit.
Yeah. Inside, it's clear that the temple itself is older than the histories of Tarkir that Narset is aware of, which is a sort of big signifier again to the fact that there is timey-wimey shit going on, or like a history of Tarkir that maybe the dragons kept from everyone else, because this temple is clearly older than what even Narset understands, and she's meant to be this big spod who like has a library of information. In the temple, they find an omen path. Although it seems more raw and older. They comment that it's not smooth, it's kind of jagged, like a tear in the multiverse.
Yeah, literally like a tear.
Whereas the omen paths are sort of seen as being like natural paths.
But they've also got like triangular runic kind of structure to them, even though we'll never find out why.
When they go through this omen path, because of course they go through it, they find a realm that seemingly has no dimensionality, which is a good word, and us Vorthoses will recognise this almost instantly as the meditation realm. So there's lots of really, really nice descriptors here of it looking like a painting, and there's like things that are far away, but they never seem to get closer.
And the two of them have very different views of it. So I think the point is Elspeth sees it because her mind is unclouded by a notion of what to expect or what to perceive. She actually sees it for what it is, which is this sprawling pool, as it were, like what we've seen in the images set for it being this kind of like a very serene kind of plain looking area, whereas for Narset it's an M.C. Escher painting. It's just fucking stairs and archways, and even the floor, you can't trust it because it's just moving. She's on an acid trip, basically.
Which for like a Jeskai must be quite something.
Uh-huh.
Cool. As they move through this realm, they find a hooded figure holding a small creature.
What colour's his robe?
Oh, right. No, it's blue, isn't it?
It's Jace.
Jace and Luke.
It's fucking Jace. Yeah,
Jace and Luke.
Good. Yeah,
we've got to stop doing that bit. Elspeth and Jace have not seen each other since their battle on New Phyrexia.
Yeah, since Elspeth, shoved Luxio into his fucking chest.
It's pretty gnarly.
I know.
So they have a little bit of a, as Planeswalkers often do, they have a little bit of a like, oh, we killed each other last time, but I guess we're just going to have a conversation this time.
Yeah, I think the entrance is not the reunion I was expecting, which kind of gives off the point of it wasn't him in the voice telling them to come.
Yes, very true. There's a nice moment here where Narset, being again the student of knowledge, immediately starts going into like, and also, again, not maybe having the quickest response to conventional social cues.
Understanding that this is an awkward moment.
Yeah.
Just starts
going, how did you separate your Phyrexian mind from your regular mind?
Yeah, that must have been really difficult. You must have done this.
And then and I'm going to pre-apologise here in case anyone's just like, that's absolutely not how it works. But I think in the past we've joked about Jace having like maybe an ADHD personality. And there is sometimes a trope that I have been told of people with autism who like and people with ADHD in couples. And there is absolutely a moment where both Narset and Jace are like going, "What did you do this? Yeah, I did this," and like, trading off theories.
They're geeking out over
They're
each
geeking out
other,
together, instantly, completely ignoring the fact that Elspeth, the Archangel of the Multiverse, is there. Like, what the fuck?
What are you guys even talking about? Like, this is not okay.
Yeah, and I think that's
again
really nice.
You can't set up those kinds of payoffs without actually really defining these individual characters as having these quite disparate ways of looking at the world.
And you can't have those kinds of characters without representation.
Boom. It is important.
Narset and Jace kind of have this moment where they try and talk about his Phyrexianization, which gets kind of moved past quite quickly, and I think quite understandably we've
already been on it.
Yeah, we've been there, and also it's all a little bit with waffle magic, isn't it? Yeah. Things turn as Elspeth demands to know what loot is and what Jace is doing in the realm. So loot, much like how in Ether Drift we kind of got more of a sense of personality and distress from loot, this is like explicit, like Jace is keeping him under telepathically, and it's not even like Loot is there kind of quietly sleeping. He's like in a
tossing
nightmare.
And turning. Yeah, this is genuine bad parenting, abusive parenting. Like the way that Jace is being, with even like subjectively, is not okay. And there's a very specific challenge raised by Vraska and by everyone to be like, why are you like you're so far beyond understanding that you've gone too far. Yeah, and this is kind of grounding to us, and it kind of really ingratiates me towards Luke. I kind of feel with each set that goes by, I'm like, I just want this little guy to be okay.
Do you know what? I absolutely see that, because I wasn't annoyed by his presence in this set, whereas I have been in previous ones. And
because you don't have a picture of him in the set going.
Well, I also
I think actually got chance to get to know him better.
Well, I think that's exactly you said it. They've tried to imprint a personality onto what is essentially a baby. Yeah. And I hate that at the best of times with human babies, let alone with mascots for card games. Yeah. And when they've just made it go, it's a defenseless, innocent creature who just happens to be powerful because it's Magic the Gathering. And this parental figure is abusing it. That's a much more powerful image than, oh, help me, I don't like being in this cage, which is what we got in Ether Drift.
Yeah, that kind of like, oh, I'm just a different coloured Pikachu, you want to save me, right? Yeah. It doesn't. This is actually just, he doesn't even, I don't think we get a single word from him.
And it works so much better.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we, as human fucking beings, and as animals, mammals even, we understand the idea of like having offspring and young. Yeah. We don't necessarily need to be fucking sold to by a mascot.
Yeah, true.
I kind of feel that it was a much better decision.
He's not a human. He's a noble beast, but it has humanized his character so much more. Yeah.
Episode 6. Here we go, baby. So this is when we time jump into the recent past, and it's Jace's POV, and we see that cracks in his and Vraska's relationship are starting to run deep. Whatever Jace's plan is with loot, Vraska does not like it. We still don't get the explanation. We also see on the way to the temple with loot, so that we see a little snippet of Jace going through the Dragonstorm to the temple with the Omen Path to the meditation realm, that Jace is forced, quote unquote, that in his words, to use harsher and harsher means to control Loot.
Yeah, because Loot is more and more, nah, I don't want to do this, please.
Loot is still a child, just to remind everyone, and he doesn't want to do whatever it is Jace is forcing him to do, and Jace is now being a fucking arsehole. Back in the present of the meditation realm, Elspeth, Narset, and Jace seek to unlock the mysteries of the plane. And so basically, Jace is saying to them, they're not quite in combat yet. Jace is there saying, look, I'm here to understand what this plane is. I've been here before. They don't really expand on that. He doesn't expand to them what he means by that. No. But they all go...
For good reason.
They all go, fine, like, whatever it is, like, this is kind of a spooky place. Let's figure this shit out.
Yeah, they're under the impression that he's also there for the first time.
Yes.
That all of these things that are happening, they're all experiencing within the same kind of, like, what the hell is going on?
And whilst Elspeth and Jace start to overthink things, Narset, being the kind of serene, mindful person that she is, suggests meditation, which is obviously a big pull from her Jeskai training.
Yeah, the meditation realm essentially tries to take what you think it's going to look like and then twist it, whereas if you just let it represent itself, how it wants to be represented, you will see it for what it really is.
So Narset basically gives them a little crash course on deep meditation, and this works.
Yeah, shut the fuck up, Jace, for once, thank you.
However, it reveals, in front of them, a concealed Ugin and Nicobolus intertwined in a magical binding. So this is the first time that we've seen them since War of the Spark, right?
Yeah. Which has been, what?
6 years.
6 years, yeah. Which, considering that Ugin is spoken to have been markedly, for lack of a better word, damaged.
Mm-hmm.
He's not got his luster, he looks battered, effort is going into keeping this binding going.
Bolos is seemingly still without his memories, because when we left him in War of the Spark, he was like a broken being.
Yeah, he was blind, he was tattered from being thrust through the blind eternities, and he couldn't remember shit.
However, although he still doesn't have his memories of what's going on, he knows that the being next to him is his brother. He still doesn't know that Ugin's name is Ugin, or that his name is Nicobolus. But he is much more the kind of preening villain as a personality. It's almost like he is who he is again. He just doesn't have the memories for the context.
Exactly. So all the memories have still shaped him. The memories that shaped him have still... He's not like, I don't know who I am. He knows exactly who he is. He just doesn't know why he is.
Yeah. Exactly. So we have this situation going on. Where are we at? Bolos is more cognizant than when we last left him, and he recognises that Ugin is his brother, and that he and Jace have had a previous relationship.
Yes, he calls him an accomplice.
Which is true.
Yeah, considering, well, I guess from Bolus's point of view, he wasn't an accomplice. From a situation they're in currently, he is an accomplice, yeah.
Well, isn't it...
So I don't think Jace ever really truly helped him, because he got banished, and then it wasn't until when he came back for War of the Spark, and then I don't think at any point he has him under his thrall, because it was only Liliana who truly turned sides.
Did Jace ever work for... When he worked for Tezzeret in the Infinite Consortium, was Tezzeret under Bolus's control at that point?
No, Bolus, that kind of happens a little bit afterwards. Test of Metal is where all of this happens, and Test of Metal I don't believe is considered to be canon. So my memory of what happened within that time frame and what is actually legitimate or not is a little fuzzy.
Ugin is horrified of the group's presence, and he's also horrified that their disruption will cause him to lose his hold over Bolos, and then Jace finally reveals his plan. So, if we will all remember from all the many, many artworks of Nicobolus, and indeed the Nicobolus horns, Nicobolus has always had an egg, the gem of becoming, in between his horns.
Yes, that's not his.
It's not his. Whose is it?
Ugin's. It's because I think even in Hour of Revelation or Finale of Revelation, there is a giant one on the horizon, and it's kind of like the meditation realm definitely kind of takes artistic license in size and grandeur and spatial awareness and all that kind of thing. But it's Ugin's super mystical, powerful orby thingy. Yeah,
which he is using to use the meditation to control the meditation realm to keep Bolos there as like a prison.
Yeah, the entire plane is a cage at this point.
Yeah,
to the point of where the plane itself was trying to hide itself from Narset, and it was only when she had the clarity to go, hey, maybe I don't look at all the weird oogie boogie stuff that's happening. As a defense mechanism, making anyone that goes to you not be able to traverse you is a pretty powerful and successful way of stopping people from breaking you.
So here we go. This is Jace's plan that's been building up throughout the entirety of the Omen Path arc and the Dragonstorm arc. He is in the meditation realm to steal the power of Ugin's Gem of Becoming so that he can control the meditation realm to warp reality, because the meditation realm is essentially raw reality.
Yes. Connected tangentially, nebulously, it doesn't really say exactly how, but it's connected to the rest of the blind eternities and the rest of the planes.
He's going to reshape his reality as he wants it within the meditation realm, which will then, through another case of a bit of yada yada, make it so outside of the blind eternities, outside of that realm, through the blind eternities to the rest of the multiverse.
He's going to literally try to rewrite history.
Yeah, bringing back everyone who died from Orby 1, unphyrexianizing those who've been phyrexianized, heal his girlfriend in Vraska, the whole shebang. Yeah. And the only reason he ever needed loot in the first place
was to find his way there using the Omen Paths, because the only reason he ever got let into the meditation realm initially, because he knew that Bolos, he was the only person other than Ugin who knew Bolos was there, was because Ugin let him go there. Yeah, exactly. There was an agreement between Ugin and Jace, while the big culmination of battles happening in War of the Spark, these two telepaths are just having a little nat around the corner. It was all duplicitous, no one else was supposed to know, and then somehow it kind of yada yada very much this idea of where he goes, oh, well, because when I was last here I noticed this and I noticed that, and it's like, unless you were told explicitly, I don't see how you could feel like one random tiny little pocket of the blind eternities could affect and influence the rest of the Blind Eternities.
He is still convinced of it.
Yeah, bless his heart. He thinks it's true.
He does it. He takes the gem of becoming.
There's a moment where Ugin's like halfway through the sentence going like, you should stop distracting me because otherwise, Jace, what are you doing? And Jace is like just stood on his face like going, mine now. Reaching forwards and taking the gem.
He takes the gem. He literally keeps it under his arm.
Yeah.
And he enacts his plan.
How big is it supposed to fucking be?
Well, you know.
Yada,
it's
right?
not like the One Ring. It doesn't fucking shrink in size, you know. And he does it. He imagines his reality. The meditation realm starts doing his business. But he's just not strong enough.
He's just the strongest telepath in the entire multiverse is still just a human.
And he shatters into nothingness.
Yeah, there's a nut. Sorry, it's not just him that shatters. The sky shatters into nothingness, and the nothingness of the void envelops him. First one to be enveloped. All the while this is happening, Bolas is cackling away.
Yeah.
We haven't really talked about it. Like, this is a really, really good story. This is like when us Volthosians go, this is the good shit.
Yeah.
We rub our palms together because Bolas at this whole time is going, because Elspeth fucks it. At one point she goes, well, Jace, how do you not know that Bolas is there? And then Bolas goes, wait, my name is Bolas? And his name is Ugin?
Yeah.
Well, if those aren't, some very cool names for very important people to have.
Oh, that's a sick name!
Yeah, like, basically that's all is what he says. And then while all this is happening, and literally reality is disintegrating into whatever the hell we could, like, there's no way for us to fully fathom what is physically happening. He's cackling away. And obviously Ugin is trying his best to keep him down, whilst Elspeth turns to Narset and goes, fucking run.
Yeah.
Fucking run.
So they leave this collapsing plane. So now we go into episode 6. They have
loot, by the way.
They do have
loot. Yeah.
They do have loot. It is very interesting how every character that meets Luke for the first time is like, Jace has weird vibes. We need to get this child away from him. Do you know what I mean? Like,
he's got a massive mouthful of drink then. It's so funny that everyone just looks and going, dude, you just put the kid down.
Yeah.
Like, this is
also, sorry, I did skip over a little bit. Vraska is also there.
Vraska is kind of there, but not there, because she was there in the initial flashback story.
Yeah.
And then there's one of these cut-off points where Jace goes, well, I wish I didn't have to do the bad thing, ... Next story, there's no Vraska. It's just Jace and Luke running away from him.
Yeah.
Being increasingly like, wow, leave me alone, you bad guy. And then we never see her in the meditation realm. And then we do get to see her as they're escaping.
Yeah.
And she just is there, out of nowhere. In fact, I think she even comes into the meditation
realm. She does, very briefly.
Very briefly. Don't know how she managed to get there. Maybe she follows him. Who knows? She's an old school assassin.
And I think Elspeth notes that, or one of them, Narset or Elspeth, notes that she's very far from the Queen of the Gold Eye.
Yeah, she's no longer that person. She is old, and she is, like, not old. Old is the wrong word. It's like weathered almost. Yeah, like, you can tell the age and the worry that's kind of been on her shoulders. Also, she went through Phyrexianization.
She did.
So there's probably some amount of physical bodily harm that resides from that as well.
Episode 6. I have not written the synopsis down, as I said. So, big battle.
Well, first things first, they've managed to escape, right?
They escape out of the temple, out of the Omen Path.
And Vraska's just like, gimme loot, which, weird enough, neither of them challenge. I think they're so distracted by the fact that there are literally thousands of dragons coming at them across the horizon. So Narset's just like, yeah, sure, take the little guy. And then it's like, and says like, yeah, just run away from him. And it's almost like Vraska goes, already on it. And then just puts a camouflage on herself and just disappears into nowhere. Yeah. But yes, there is so what Ajani speaks of when he comes to find them and one of the dragons is that this giant, colossal, horizon-wide dragon is calling loads of dragons to it. It's almost like he has the power of Dragonstorms. Whenever he roars, more dragons are spawned. It's very reminiscent to the M19 story when Bolas when Ugin shouts a load of dragons into existence and then Ugin takes his power and turns them all against him. It's very hard to say the dragons are blotting out the sky and be able to go, well, that's just fucking dumb. You know, because obviously it would be ridiculously awe-inspiring, but there are essentially two planeswalkers facing an entire horde of dragons, because Sarkhan's directive motive is just to destroy the temple, because it's the only other source that can challenge his control and power over the dragons, which essentially obviously being Ugin.
Yeah. So this big dragon battle ensues. Elspeth goes up against Sarken in his massive dragon
Whilst
form.
Narset's just like palming off and dodging all these dragons.
I mean, she's doing a really good job, but there's a real motif, and there's a motif I'm going to talk about a little bit now. There's a huge through line with every character and almost every subplot that revolves around the idea of death. So, for example...
Yeah, we haven't raised that yet.
In this moment, Narset repeats in her mind that she's like, I'm going to die
This
here.
is my last.
This is my last, so I'm going to do what I can, but also what's going to happen to me, because we do then at this point reveal that the dragon soul ritual needed the Khans to put themselves into the ritual.
Which is why I think that the dragons that came out of that were spirit dragons, because they have the spirits of the Khan within them.
So what happens when Narset dies? There's a moment when she tries to explain what the Abzan are to... I think it's Ajani, or she's comparing the two, the Jeskai and the Abzan, and their relationship to the afterlife. When she's like,
she's talking to Elspeth,
and it's like, well, the Abzan have like literal representations of their dead; they are spirits, whereas the Jeskai don't believe that there aren't spirits. It's just they don't necessarily think the spirits need to remain on this mortal plane. And then
she has a moment where she's like, I'm telling this to someone who is a manifestation of spirit.
Yeah, who is like essentially like undead and immortal because they are an angel who have like an afterlife.
They've passed through death and then come back from it.
Ajani talks about his kind of metaphorical death with Phyresis and the fact that he maybe doesn't deserve to live anymore,
because
which
he
is
enjoyed being Phyrexian.
Which is what the Jijini was talking to him about, where they were like, living isn't living what you're doing now, so you need to learn how to live again.
You're essentially waiting to die. You're not existing.
Sarkhan talks about how his life is over because he can't become a dragon again, and the only way that he gets his life, quote unquote, back is by killing another and taking that one's life.
Yeah.
And there's a whole passage about his morality
and his shame of doing so as well.
Tygam feels like his life isn't where it needs to be, and he wants to his existence died when the Dragons Lords died for all intents and purposes. So every character has a relationship with death, which I think is a really understated but completely it glues everything together really nicely.
Tarkir is the plane of past lives and death. Like, you've had two different timelines that have both essentially been eradicated. Yes, okay, there's always things that are living, and there's always a through line, the timeline continues, but both trajectories of the plane have essentially been rewritten, and everyone within those have had to either deal with the death of that culture or adjust to the death of that culture, whether they're a part of it or not. Which is that again, cultural erasure kind of thing. To have that be present on a global scale, but is also then on an individual scale, it makes the whole story a little bit like revealing. Like, the mortality of it is quite laid bare.
So, as Narset and Elsbeth are facing off against Sarkhan and the dragons, you kind of get the feeling that they actually might not survive this one. And then who should arrive?
Yeah, the Abzan. Ajani on the back of a dragon.
So, we haven't mentioned this before, but part of the kind of dragons and clans coexisting without the Dragon Lords is that the humanoids ride the dragons.
They're all Zergos now.
And the dragons themselves are kind of cool with it. Yeah. They actually have actual personalities.
They even have conversations.
Yeah, they talk.
Yeah.
Which I thought was a little bit twee.
I was going to say the exact same word. It's a little twee. Because we don't get a lot of that outside of the Dragon Lords, it's a bit strange that now all of them have these fleshed out personalities. It's like if a horse could talk. It's like, are you alright just letting me sit on you all day? Yeah. Just give me some hay, man.
So Ajani and the Abzan finally join the fight. And Ajani has this moment, again talking about death and life and what it means to be alive, where he goes, these two friends of mine are going to die unless I do something drastic. And there's quite an extended passage where we talk about Ajani and who he was and what his alignment is, and being like a white planeswalker, he has faith. And that's the thing he lost. When he was turned to Phyresis, his faith was so encompassed with Elesh Norn, that's what he put his faith in, that when he realised that they were so misplaced and corrupted, he couldn't get the idea of faith back
again. Yeah. And this is the moment he goes, I just need to do something.
And he takes a leap of faith, which is the line, and it's a very well.
It's funny because he does just literally just jump off the back of a fucking dragon.
He does the Gideon jumping off the back of Rakdos, right?
Rakdos, and just slices this fucking dragon.
Fucking flies off his mount and cuts dragons down.
It's kind of funny because is it Keleth? What's the name? Falafar. That's a really cool name. But so they're kind of flying in. It's almost like a little look of going, "Hey, Ajani, your friends aren't doing so hot." And then he's like, "Well, I don't know. Narset's kind of handling it." It's like, "Yeah, she is, but look at that one slinking up the stairs behind her."
Behind her.
And it's like, I'm just imagining, I can't put the image out of my head of how it's it's like someone like a pizza spinner, you know, the pizza sign spinners, and she's just doing that with dragons, and they come, and then she goes whoop, and then zoops them off. And the fact there's just this little sneaky
deflecting palm,
yeah, exactly, and that is literally her spell, so it does make sense. But in my mind, you can't just dodge a bunch of dragons.
Well, this is she knows this is what she's gonna know.
It's mental.
Anyway, long story short, there's a big battle with a bunch of dragons until Ugin fucking shows up,
and
having lost control over Bolus.
Says enough.
And just fucking kills Sarkhan.
Well, we don't know for sure. So the flesh goes pink to char, and then all it says is, and then it was done. Because he says he flees, and then it was done. His body doesn't fall to the ground.
Okay.
He's not claimed as being dead. He just goes... The way I look at it is, he's a motherfucking dragon.
Yeah.
As much as fire can hurt him, and it is ghost fire, fair enough, it's going to hurt him. As much as it might turn to pink and then smoulder and char, that is just his skin.
Fair enough.
And he's a big-ass fucking dragon. He will come back.
So Sarkhan's off with the brood under his control. So we didn't necessarily say all the wild dragons are under his control because he
has control of
the dragon.
So the thing that happened to him was essentially a bastardization of the dragon soul ritual that the Khans originally
Which
did.
Narset understands. Tygam's one of the only other people that would have known that, and immediately is like, "Oh, fucking Tygam showed this to you."
But also, how did you fuck the ritual up? Because this isn't how it should be.
Yeah.
And obviously, Ugin, the reason why they were going to the temple was to destroy the temple and the connection to the meditation realm, because Ugin was the only other thing that could challenge his control. Which, again, Tygam, what the fuck were you thinking? How does any of this benefit you as an individual?
It really doesn't.
Like, none of it makes sense to me.
Yeah, the Tygam involvement's a little bit pushed.
Yeah, and so obviously, as soon as Ugin comes in and says enough, all of the wild dragons flee. And then there's a really, really cool line of where if it was almost like if rage could kill, Ugin's heart would have stopped. Because Tarkir just turns around and goes, "No, not you again!" Because obviously he had Ugin's voice in his head for so long. And he's like, "I will not be subjugated by you again." And Ugin's like, "Yeah, you fucking will."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, okay, fair enough. Here's some fire." And Ugin's like, "Yeah, that's nothing, bitch. Here's some ghost fire." And then he, scampers off, dies, whatever, to crawl onto a bush and die off screen if it happens, whatever. And then, as you say, Ugin's just like, "Yeah, also, by the way, guys, Bolus is gone." And that's kind of just like... That's how that particular story ends, and then we get a tiny, tiny little epilogue, which is in some dark space. A droplet of liquid is falling, and it plops into a pool that grows and grows, and within that pool, there's a blue colour. A blue cloaked face reflects. So Jace isn't dead.
Yeah, but what the fuck is he?
In the Edge of Eternities, maybe. Who knows?
Is he in another meditation realm?
What did the meditation realm physically exist in? Because the dark. So when they say the end of episode 5, when the darkness envelops him and everything goes to shit, everyone's saying like, well, that's the blind eternities, right? But the thing about the blind eternities is they're not called the blind eternities because I think they exist in darkness. I'm pretty sure that there is like crazy chaos kind of stuff happening in between them. So if it is just void, fair enough, this is just something existing in the blind eternities, and we don't really know how they metaphysically work, considering there are omen paths that travel between them and everything. It's like, imagine if you were just, an Eldrazi trying to move through your nice void space, and then like there's all these little like globes around that you're like, "Oh, can I eat you later? Oh, can I eat you later?" And then you keep tripping up over these omen paths. Like, again, the metaphysics is kind of a little bit wibbly-wobbly, but I don't think that the meditation realm is destroyed. I think that he broke it, but it still exists within whatever it is. And now it's reforming around him. Which is another... I guess we're going to see Jace again in 5 years, and I kind of like that... So I guess now we can start talking about, like, our opinions on it. We've done a fair good job, I think, of talking about each individual thing as it goes on, but as it means for the greater whole of the story... I'm mildly disappointed that the MacGuffin and everything and where his story was going and this big plan that he had was the plan that he had, because it feels a little unfounded, which is very Jace, but just because a character is flawed doesn't stop you getting bored of their flaws after a while.
It seems a little bit... I know his plan is as grand as he wants to fix reality.
It's a Doctor Who episode, basically.
But it seems so abstract. It's not like... I'm going to rule the multiverse because otherwise it's chaos, which would have been a much more like real, tangible thing for everyone else to go like, "Oh, you've gone insane." Yeah. This is like, magic. Do you know what I mean?
It is very much, like it's throwing spaghetti at a wall, and I'm not entirely sure if it's stuck or not, kind of situation. And again, like, Vraska was behind this, but they're not behind it. And this whole arc, I just think, didn't have the chops, I think, to make it, to really carry itself the way it needed to, because it didn't justify itself well enough. As you were saying at the end of, was it the Avishkar, the Aether Drift kind of story? It kind of bastardized both Jace and Vraska's characters.
Mm-hmm. I
would have just much more happy if she was on board the entire time. And she's like, yeah, I know this is bad, but we are doing this together for each other. Because I look at this story, or this plan, and I'm like, why would Vraska ever believe in this or agree with this? This isn't a Phoenix rewriting. This is some idiot thinking that he can put everyone into a dream.
And also, he would have had to have told her at some point that Bolas is still alive.
Right? And because otherwise he's just saying, oh, I'm going to go to this place and it's got this really special magic thing. Or he could have even just said, oh, I need to go and find Ugin.
Oh, he could have said that, yeah.
Who knows? But because we don't see... And these are the kind of stories of where you don't get it said in the story because it's distracting. Or the individual stories that had their own arcs, the Aether Drift arc, and it's just random people here on the side with the greater Dragonstorm arc, which isn't even the Dragonstorm arc, it's actually the rewriting the multiverse and corrections still around arc. And it was only possible because of the Omen Path, but it's not the Omen Path arc, it's the Dragonstorm arc. This is why I don't like this arc theme, because some of the things that are happening across all of the arcs that don't really necessarily... They're informed by the individual arcs, but they don't actually affect them as a whole.
Well, as we said earlier on, it still doesn't really go anywhere to explaining why each plane was experiencing these Dragonstorms. No,
and it doesn't go any way to explaining what the Omen Paths are. The fact that the Omen Path to the meditation realm is a different one is really... Again, are we still in the Omen Path arc? Like, we're learning more stuff about them. There's no explanation to them. We're learning more about the Dragonstorms with no explanation to it. We don't know at the end of this story whether the Dragonstorms are going to continue or not. All we know is Ugin's gone, so... I'm out of breath because fucking my brother's just got away. By the way, these Dragonstorms are getting a little bit out of control. Am I right? So is he just going to go snap my fingers, everything's cool and fine? Yeah. And then also he's going to be like, by the way, what the fuck are all these Omen Paths?
Yeah.
And why would mine look different? Why would there be a tear?
Yeah.
Who's the voice?
You still don't know who the voice is.
Because the tear
It's not Ugin.
So the tear Omen Path makes me feel like it's someone specifically who has found a way to get to the meditation realm, but then has had to lure someone else, even though Jace was going in their own volition.
Is it... Do you reckon it's Niv Mizzet?
But, I mean, maybe.
Because he's been mapping it, so maybe he's found a way to create an Omen Path.
Yeah, but who created the tear? Why would it look like a tear?
Because he's not good at it.
So you think he's personally done the tear? But then also, why wouldn't he want to explore within it? Or was he just happy? Was he accidentally in the meditation realm as well? And then also, if Jace was also going on his own path, why would the voice tell them, Narset and Elspeth, to go there? Because they didn't stop him. They didn't allow him... It wasn't even like the voices going, hey, go here to stop this bad thing, and they accidentally let Jace in, because that would have been cool. If they'd got to the temple, Jace is there going, I don't actually know how to get in, and they're like, oh, you need to go in as well? It's like, yeah, I've got to stop these... Wait, what are you here for? Because I'm here for that. And then they all go in together. See, that makes more sense to me than just having Jace be in the plane already, and it's these kinds of, like, little things that just make everything feel slightly less glued together, and it makes it feel a little bit more like they're just going, okay, how do we make the next bit happen without actually having a real thought process as to the story beats across the last 10 years? Not the character beats, because I think they did a really good job of the character beats.
I think a couple of character assassinations aside, I actually think they fleshed them out. We learned new things about all of them.
And the assassinations I don't think happened in this story. They've been happening beforehand.
Yeah.
Apart from Sarkhan.
Sarkhan.
For Sarkhan, I think that's just an unfortunate thing of, like, we would like to have had a story with him being cool and okay, and it's just unfortunate that we didn't.
They killed Lucas, so they had to have an angry man Red Planeswalker.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of... And then, again, the overlapping of the stories was a little bit contrived. It would have just been nice to have maybe a different way where Elspeth and Najani didn't have to cross paths the first time and then have the second meeting. The second meeting could have been good enough. We didn't necessarily have to have Sarkhan crossing Elspeth and Narset to meet Tygam to then do this thing, because that could have just been this entirely other thing that's happening on the side without feeling like it's also contrived within this main arc that we're seeing. And I think that's where my, it doesn't settle well within my stomach. If you made this a film, I'd be like, nah, it's a pretty all-over-the-place film.
Yeah, a little bit. Do you know there's one more little wrinkle? There's a line from episode 5.
Oh, yes.
This is a long sentence. I'm just going to cut in halfway through. If there'd been a solution less brutal, but just as effective as the one he'd choose, if Lute had looked a little frightened, or if Jace had been quick enough to put the Fomori under... ...
Yeah.
So this is the first soft confirmation, that Lute is a Fomori. Like, he is part of that race.
So my main thing that kind of pushes back against that is the unreliable narrator. Like, this is Jace's point of view. He would, of course, think, without knowing, because he's not meta Fomori. There's only one Planeswalker currently that we know of who might not be a Planeswalker, but I'm not entirely sure. The elephant guy, Quintorius.
We haven't had a Planeswalker, yeah.
Have we seen Have we seen him despark since?
He wasn't. He got his spark afterwards, didn't he?
No, I'm pretty sure he's desparked in the fucking Aftermath story.
No,
actually.
I'm pretty sure he is.
I'm going to look it up.
No, because in Cans of Ixalan, his is a Planeswalker card.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, that makes sense. But does that happen before?
That's after.
Is that after?
Yes.
In fact, this timeline is all wibbly wobbly. So the fact that Jace assumes, because he's gone into a Fomori vault, he assumes that this creature is of Fomori descent instead of Fomori affiliation. Whereas the Fomori we've seen someone actively be engaging with,
giant goatmen.
But even then, we also kind of, to be devil's advocate to myself, we don't know if Quintorius was looking at a quote unquote Fomori.
Or just like a statue, like a giant statue.
Or it could have been that, if the Fomori of the space jockeys was the thing in the vat, an alien, the xenomorph,
But the only reason I sort of think actually this does confirm it is because, and I know this is a very throwaway detail, but Lute with his kind of tiny horns and he's got like, the fur. I just think the design now is too like, oh, okay, a character in the story is called him Fomori. All the things that people thought, oh, he could be a baby goat. It's just too much.
Yeah, I guess the other thing against that is that when they say he's both very young and very old, it's like, is he only very old because he was put in stasis to not develop? And in which case, why? When they grow up, do they start losing?
Or is it a Yoda?
Or is it a Yoda kind of thing? Yeah, but then also do the rest of the Fomori are they just super, super, super fucking old once they've grown up?
Which is not something we've ever seen.
Or is this a slightly different rate? And this is why I think this whole Fomori Vault was really, really cool. But you've kind of, for my own sense of fucking self, I have to yada yada it because I don't think it lines up properly yet. And annoyingly, stories like this kind of make me feel like maybe they're not really going to iron out all the creases. They're just going to go, here's the wardrobe, figure it out yourself.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, next time we see Quint, it might be, I kind of really hope it's Edge of Eternities. Like, that would make sense to me. That
Quint in space would be cool.
It's a spaceship. He's just found a spaceship. He's just activated a spaceship, and then we're going to space the year after. And we haven't seen anything of him in between. You please just put Fomori and Tezzeret in the same set together with crazy iridescent angels. Like that's it. I mean, now we've kind of drawn a line under most of the fucking big arcs that are happening. We can kind of go, fuck the rest of the normal multiverse right now.
Omen Pass is done. Dragonstorms are done.
Yeah, the Omen Pass is still happening. Dragonstorms are probably under control.
But they're like...
Bolas is loose, but we don't know where. The meditation realm is disintegrated, and Jace is maybe like this super all-powerful being. Maybe similar to like a Valgavoth kind of thing.
He's become a Kira.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, all of that. And then you've still got Valgavoth. I mean, ignore all of that fucking shit over there, because that's really messy.
Space Goats.
Let's have a look over the Space Goats. Yeah? And that kind of thing almost is the flip of the coin of going, oh, you thought all of that was batshit crazy. You don't even know what it's like looking at it from 1,000 miles away.
Yeah.
You know? It's like, if living in America must be super crazy right now. Looking at it from the other side of the pond.
From Europe.
Holy shit, man. You guys are nutterbuzz.
Yeah.
That all of the stuff is happening. So it's almost like, with it, living within it, it's crazy. But then to get that perspective outside of it, hopefully maybe grounds it a little bit more. It gives us some time to look at something else before coming back and hopefully tying up one of the 8,000 different threads. Emrakul is still in the moon, Andy.
That's so funny. I sent out a WhatsApp, Bluesky today, that literally said, we still have the Bolas Eldrazi Phyrexian cycle going.
Yeah.
Emrakul's in the moon.
Yeah, because everyone's in the moon. Bolas is back out again, and for all intents and purposes, Phyrexia will probably at some point, who knows, come back again.
Oh, there's still a drop somewhere.
They're still in Zalfir. Well, not in Zalfir, in the pocket. In the Edge of Eternities, maybe. Who knows? And again, maybe there's too many weird, super weird things that they could just pick up and develop however they want to in the future. And I've stopped being disheartened about how story arcs don't culminate and finish and complete in ways that I find super satisfying. I'm more interested in seeing the next interpretation of the thing they can't let die.
Yeah.
Which sounds mildly cynical, but it's not, because that's how a franchise exists.
Look, again, I think it's the third time we'll say it. It's been 6 years since Bolas has been in the story.
It's about time.
It's about time. He wasn't dead. They always were going to bring him back.
We always knew. Yeah, the Phyrexians are probably the least likely to come back for a really long time, and they actually had the biggest gap, I think, between
Yeah.
Invasion and all of that happening, and then obviously New Phyrexia, and that was a really interesting thing because it just kind of happened out of nowhere. It's like, shit, Phyrexia's back.
Yeah.
And then it's been a long time of that developing, and the Eldrazi, again, all you've got to do is just one day say someone messed around with the moon.
Yeah.
And then we don't even know what's happening with Ulalek. Is Ulalek canon? We still
No,
don't know.
I don't think Ulalek's
It's
canon.
not officially, but they could just go, well, now we've made him, them, it.
Well, yeah,
canon.
with all the other 3 Eldrazi Titans gone, maybe that's the manifestation of the
Because that's the
multiverse.
2 together, and then record. Yeah, who knows? They can. It's a long enough time that I feel like they might not do it the best justice, but I'll always be engaged to see how they reinterpret the things I've already seen done in the past. And as long as they don't do it a massive disservice, and they actually kind of, look at it with a modicum of integrity, then I think it's going to be fine. I just think that Jace arc kind of fell a little flat when we don't get a full conclusion.
Yeah.
It's just another cliffhanger of, well, now what's he up to?
Take that, SpongeBob SquarePants.
Oh god, SpongeBob SquarePants. I must admit, giving Patrick just a really overcosted vanilla legendary, and then just having flavor text basically be like, what's even the point? Making SpongeBob Yoda and a human? Get out of fucking town.
I shouldn't have opened this door.
should.
Tell us what you think about the Dragonstorm storyline and about where Magic is going on our Bluesky MT flavouring at bluesky.social. I have no idea if I ever get that right because it's one of those weird URLs. You all know where it is. The Butterfly app. You can also find us on X and Twitter if that's your kind of thing. You can also send emails to mtflavouring with no UR at gmail.com. Anything else?
No, that was a lot. A lot of cool story.
Let's go eat some curry.
Curry.
Thank you so much for listening. This has been Magic the Flavouring.
We'll see you soon.